This drummer has worked with so many cool people: David Lee Roth, Foreigner, Gregg Rolie, love him, and someone who is very, very hot right now and always has been, a Cher. Who doesn't love Cher? And he has definitely had his fair share of genres that he's worked with. And today he is the drummer for the Steve Miller Band, who is going to be heading out on the road for the stadium tour very, very soon with Def Leppard and Journey, another band he has tons and tons of connections with. Thank you so much, Ron Wikso, for being with us today.
Hi, Kiki. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thanks for having me.
It's just amazing that you have so many connections to so many different bands. And another cool tidbit I found out about you. So you started playing drums when you were 7, and you got the bug really early on in life, which is usually how it happens, right? And you were living in Long Island before you went off to college in Boston at the Berklee School of Music. So how do you miss Boston? And how much did you love that city? Because I got to tell you, that is like my favorite city.
Well, I do love Boston, and I've been back there a number of times on tour. I only actually lived there for 1 year, though. I only went to Berklee for 2 semesters. After that, I went back to New York and started working. So I got my education by playing.
There you go. Now, what year were you at Berklee?
I went there in the fall of 1977, which was, just a couple months after I graduated high school. I was 17 when I went there.
Wow, you were young. You started young. Yep. You started everything young.
Well,
Now, Steve Smith, former drummer of Journey, he attended Berklee until 1976, and you do have a connection with him. Did you know him while you were at Berklee?
No, he unfortunately, I wish I would have. He actually, he finished in 76, and I didn't start till 77, so he wasn't there when I went there. I did wind up, though, meeting him not too long after that, because when I moved to California, one of my first contacts with somebody who was also from New York was a guitar player named Jamie Glazer, who went to Berklee with Steve and played with Steve in the Jean-Luc Ponty band. And then about 2 years or so after I got to L.A., I shared a house. I was roommates with a bass player named Tim Landers, and Tim and Steve grew up together, and they actually started the band Vital Information together. And so I met Steve then. He used to come to the house, and they'd rehearse and stuff. He even borrowed my drums a few times. But and then, several years later, I wound up replacing him in the Storm. So, there's multiple connections. And Steve's an unbelievable drummer and great, just incredible and a great guy. And so
everybody loves Steve. You mentioned Steve Smith, and oh my gosh, people just go crazy. He's so well respected.
He's one of the best drummers on earth. He's just incredible. So,
and
I can't believe that I got to, attempt to fill his shoes in the Storm.
I know.
It's kind of daunting.
It's just crazy. But when you guys did meet, did you start talking about Berklee and say, hey, I went there too?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we talked about that, because Tim had been there, and I think a couple of the other guys in the original Vital Information may have also attended Berklee. So I'm sure it came up, but we talked about lots of different things. I was mostly just kind of awestruck, because by then he was in Journey, and he'd played with Jean-Luc, and he'd done all this stuff, and he was already a world-renowned drummer, and I was just a guy trying to, get a foot in the door, so I was just happy to get to, talk to him in any kind of capacity at that time. This is, we're talking like 1982, 1983 or 4, somewhere in that vicinity.
And another Journey connection that you had was you were part of the supergroup WCR, World Class Rockers, and they had a ton of different members, come and go. And when you left WCR, you were replaced by Ainsley Dunbar, another former member of Journey, which is crazy. And when you were with The Storm, another supergroup, which you've been talking about, you were also recommended by Pat Torpey from Mr. Big. And I also read, and so you can clarify this, that you were recommended to The Storm by Dean Castronovo, currently of Journey, and also Steve Smith gave you the good word. Is that true?
Well, that's what I was told. I never actually talked to them, but I was told by Herbie Herbert that he had spoken to all these different guys, and that they'd given me a thumbs up or whatever you want to call it. I had known Pat for quite a while, and Herbie managed Mr. Big, and so I do know that Pat recommended me. I did talk to him about it. I also know that Mickey Curry recommended me because Mickey was Bryan Adams' drummer, and I knew him a little bit a couple of years before I got in The Storm because he was good friends with Hugh McDonald, who's the bass player in Bon Jovi, and Hugh and I were in Cher's band together. And so Mickey recommended me through Brian's manager because they knew that The Storm was going to be going out with Brian. And then Dean and Steve, of course, were in touch with Herbie, and Steve was the guy that I was replacing. So I was told by Herbie that he had, gotten recommendations from those guys for me, which is, unbelievably flattering.
Well, yeah, and when you see Dean on the tour very, very soon, maybe you can bring it up. Say, hey, you one of the guys that recommended me for The Storm.
Yes, well, Dean and I. Well, let's see. Our connection goes to kind of peripherally back to like 1988 when Bad English was being put together. I'm good friends with Ricky Phillips, and Ricky asked me to come up and play up in San Francisco. We went up there and played while they auditioned guitar players, and they auditioned 4 guys. And at that time, it was Ricky, John Waite, and Jonathan Cain, and they didn't have a drummer or a guitar player set. So they auditioned. There were 4 guys that auditioned on guitar, and they wound up selecting Andy Timmons, who went on to play with Danger Danger and Olivia Newton-John and a bunch of people. He's a great guitar player. And so Andy and I started working with that band before it was even called Bad English, just rehearsing and stuff. And then eventually Neil became available, I guess. And so, he was a marquee name. And so, of course, they wanted him to be in the band. And Neil and Dean were friends. So then Neil brought Dean in. So me and Andy were out of the band. But then I wound up being in Cher's band anyway. So it all worked out. And then Dean and I got to know each other. He came to one of the shows I did with Cher in Oregon, which is where he's from. And so I think that was why, he knew me from having heard about me from the Bad English thing, from Ricky, and also from coming to the Cher gig. So I think that's why he put in a word for me when the Storm thing came up.
That is so cool. So you were in quote unquote Bad English before Bad English was Bad English.
Well, yeah, sort of.
Kind of, sort of.
I was in the band, for like a week or two. It wasn't. We really were just kind of working some things out. I worked a lot with Ricky, at his studio and different things, and so, it just kind of led to that. But then it didn't really, take off from there, at least for me and Andy. But it was great to get to play with those guys. I had no hard feelings about it. It's just, the way the music business is sometimes.
Right. Ins and outs, ups and downs, but that's so cool. And Ricky Phillips just retired from Styx.
Yeah. Yeah, I texted him and, congratulated him on a great run, 20 plus years. I think he was with them.
It's just crazy. It's so crazy, but good for him. He's still, can do what he can do and have fun and retire while he's, on top. And that's the way you should do it. Right.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy. I don't think he's fully retiring. He's just wants to slow down a little bit. He's been doing it for so long, and he's a great guy and a great player, great musician. So good for him.
Oh yeah, and those guys are on the road non-stop. And another guy, another iconic musician you got to work with, Gregg Rolie. I mean, come on, co-founder of Journey in Santana. That had to be also another amazing, amazing moment for you.
Well, Greg and I, we became really close friends and still are. And, I met Greg when I joined the Storm. And when I joined the band, I used to stay at their house because I lived in L.A., but the band was based in San Francisco, and he lived in Nevada at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I stayed there when, I rode with him to rehearsals and back and hung out with his family and had dinner. Lori used to make lasagna and all. It was great. They were so nice to me. And we became good friends. And then later on, when, the Storm, kind of dissolved, and then I went on to do a few other things, and so did he. But we stayed in touch. And then I used to tell him all the time, hey, I got this studio, at my house, and we can do some stuff. And so when he moved to San Diego, then he wasn't too far from me, and so it became more feasible. And that's when we started doing the Roots record,
mm-hmm.
Greg's CD called Roots.
Right.
That was in 1999 we started that. It came out in 2001, I think. And, we were together all the time working on that. It was mostly just the two of us doing a lot of that stuff. He did some stuff at home, and then, and then brought it up to my studio. And anyway, then we formed the band, the Gregg Rolie Band, and we did that for, I don't know how long, close to 20 years, maybe 18 years or whatever it was. I don't know. But, and then when I lived in Texas, he bought a house about 5 minutes away from me. So I saw him all the time when I was living there. And, so Greg, we used to refer to each other more like brothers, I'm close friends with him. He's a great guy, and he's obviously had an incredible career. He's one of only, I don't know what the number is now, but less than 30 people who have been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame more than once. He's in with both Santana and Journey.
It's incredible.
And well deserved.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And what a talent. And to me, the fact that you had lasagna with Lori, I mean, I love Lori.
They used to call me Garfield because they said I love lasagna.
I mean, that's just so cool. So cool. But yeah, great people. And, you left Cher to be in the Storm. I mean, that had to mean a lot to you to do that.
Well, it was an opportunity to join a band and be a band member, whereas with Cher, Cher's gig was great and all that, but it was, I was just a hired guy there, and which was fantastic. And I went all over the world with her and played some amazing venues. But to have the opportunity to join a band, especially with, two legendary guys, Greg and Ross, and we were going out with Bryan Adams, and we were going to make another record and all this kind of stuff. It was too good to pass up. And I'm glad I did it because it's led to lifelong friendships, and it's led, it's actually led to my being in the Steve Miller Band, because we had two managers in the Storm. One was Herbie Herbert, but the other one was Scott Beret, and Scott is Steve's manager. So he's the one who called me to be in Steve's band, and it's all because I met him when I joined the Storm. So it turned out to be a good decision.
And that's where I think that, so many guys in this business have been in pretty much one band and one band only, and you have really dipped your toe into so many different bands, which has been so advantageous for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kept it interesting, that's for sure.
But I mean, Cher, right? We got to talk about Cher. I love Cher. You were on her Heart of Stone tour, and that album was huge for her. Really, really big. If I Could Turn Back Time, After All with Peter Cetera, Just Like Jesse James. I mean, great record. And she was just on fire for this tour. You guys the tour went to 3 continents, made a ton of money, sold out over and over and over again. What What was it like working for the goddess of Cher? Because she really is a goddess.
Well, it was all the things you just said. I mean, we like a big production, probably bigger than most of the things I've done. Special effects, and dancers, and even a Cher impersonator in movies. There was all kinds of crazy stuff. And we did a TV show for CBS that they shot in Las Vegas, and we did Primetime Live, one of the first episodes of that with Diane Sawyer. And, there's all kinds of great stuff that happened in that. And here's a little bit of trivia for you. When Cher and Foreigner, who I also worked with, both were just recently announced as new inductees into the Hall of Fame,
right?
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But prior to Cher being inducted, there were two other members of the band that, from when I played with it, who were inducted before her, which is kind of amazing. Hugh McDonald from Bon Jovi and Darlene Love.
Oh, that's crazy.
So I just always thought it was crazy that those two were in there and she wasn't. I just couldn't understand that. But anyway, now they've rectified that. So. All
right. So, well, she was kind of mad about it, to be quite honest. I mean, I read a lot of things that she had said, oh, if they ever put me in there, I'm not going to go. I mean, did she ever mention that?
Well, not when I haven't talked to her in a long time, but that wasn't really even a thing back then when I was playing with her. But yeah, I read that she was not too upset or not too happy, and I don't blame her. She was a trailblazer. All the ones that came after her, like Madonna and all that, she blazed the trail for them. I don't know why they were in before her. So
yeah,
but it's a wacky situation, I suppose. I don't know how all that gets sorted out, but I'm glad she got inducted.
Oh, yeah.
And arguably she should be in again for Sonny and Cher, but who knows?
Right? Absolutely. But, let's take one step at a time, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, you were also on the Love Hurts tour with her. So you got to tour with Cher twice, which is crazy. That was in 91 and 92. And the Love Hurts tour was a little bit less elaborate from what I read from the Heart of Stone tour. And like you said, you worked with Hugh McDonald, he's in Bon Jovi, and her son, Elijah Blue, who was also on that tour. And Dave Amato, which you've worked with several times. You were on both tours with him. And he's been with REO Speedwagon since 89. So he was really, really busy during that time as well. Now, just during these two tours alone, it feels like you made connections with so many people. Even though you left Cher to go to the Storm, she brought you back again. So she must have really liked you.
Well, there's kind of a crazy story with all that. Dave Amato and I are good friends and have been since probably, 87 or something like that. And we actually auditioned for Cher together.
No.
We kind of teamed up and auditioned together along with a bass player friend of ours. And then we both got hired at the same time. And here's another little interesting bit of trivia. Dave got the Cher gig and the REO Speedwagon gig in the same week.
What?
So he got the Cher gig, and then he got the REO gig, and so he wound up having to turn the Cher gig down initially. Oh. So the first set of gigs that I did with Cher was in 1989, and Dave couldn't do them, so Mitch Perry came and played. But then Dave came back the following year in 1990 because REO wasn't working, so he came and played with us in Cher's band, and he's on that video that I told you about that we did at the Mirage. Him and Hugh McDonald are both playing in that. But then, he had to leave again, and, he was in and out of the band a few times. After we did the tour in 1990, there was a hiatus for a little while, and then a few months later, she was putting a new band together. And so we all thought that none of us were in the band anymore. And Dave happened to see her. We used to rehearse at a place called the Complex in West LA. And Dave happened to run into, I don't know, he was there for some reason. He ran into her and he just asked her, why are you getting a new band? And so, long story short, they called me and I had to re-audition for the gig, which was very bizarre. But I made made a little bit of a joke out of it. I went in and I knew she took pictures of everybody, and so I brought an 8x10 of myself and I put it down in front of her and I said, "Here, this is just in case you forgot what I looked like." And so anyway, I played, and we all played, and then she basically rehired us, and that's when I did the Love Hurts thing, and I wound up doing that for a while, and then in early '92 was when I auditioned for the Storm, and that's when I had to quit her band to do that, and then she made a joke about that. She called me a traitor and all all this kind of stuff, and but she knew it was a good opportunity, and so she was cool about it. And so then I went off and did the tour with Bryan Adams with the Storm, and then they went to Europe with Cher. But then towards the end of their time in Europe and the end of the Bryan Adams tour, her manager called me and asked if I could come back and do some other shows that they had booked in New York and some other places, Vegas, and I forget where else. And anyway, it just so happened that those shows fell into the gaps in my tour with the Storm, so I was able to do both that year after I rejoined her band. So it was a wacky story, but it was fun.
Well, fun, and I mean, sometimes it's really great to be super busy. And you clearly, you had to juggle a lot of balls at that time, a lot of balls in the air, but what a great opportunity for you.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. I was very grateful.
And another great opportunity that came out of that whole Cher collaboration for you was you got to meet Richie Sambora, and just a little, gossip and dirt, which I love, not too much, but I do love it. Cher dated Richie Sambora from 89 to 90. And you worked with Hugh McDonald while he wasn't even in Bon Jovi, but you end up in Richie Sambora's band. Cher and Richie had broken up by the time, you had done the second tour. So you must have made a great impression on Richie, and he's in the news now because of John Bon Jovi's documentary he did on Hulu, Thank You, Good Night. So Richie's all back in the news, and he released a new record. So, you must have really, like I said, made another huge impression on Richie Sambora.
Well, Richie's a great guy also, and he used to come and sit in with us when he was dating Cher. He'd come and sit in sometimes, or just be hanging around, at the gigs or whatever. And, I got to know him a little bit there, and he was good friends with Dave Amato also. Dave actually did Richie's first solo tour, which was when he did Stranger in This Town, I think it was called. And so, and then, of course, Hugh was good friends with Richie from working with him in Bon Jovi. And then trying to think how this all went. So, a few years later, when Richie did his Undiscovered Soul record, he was getting ready to go out on tour, and I think he talked to Hugh and Dave, and he just called me up and asked me if I wanted to do it. So, of course, I did, and it was a blast. That was a really fun tour. He was great. The band was great. He sounded great every night. I just wish it would have gone longer.
Have you been in touch with him at all?
Not lately. I used to, Dave and I used to go golfing with him and stuff sometimes, but I moved out of California, and he's busy doing his thing, so I really haven't talked to him in a number of years. I think Dave still talks to him. They watch football together sometimes.
Oh dear Lord! Imagine. Oh, I would love to just give them chips. I would do something. Maybe hand them a hot dog. I don't know, something like that. And Dave Amato is from Massachusetts. I'm from Rhode Island, so he's kind of close to my home. Yeah, he's a Bostonian. Yes, he is. And when you were with the Storm, I have to tell you, so I'm listening to some Storm music, of course, and Kevin, do you say it's Chalfant? Is that how you say his last name?
Yeah, Kevin Chalfant.
He really has a Steve Perry sound, don't you think?
Yeah, he's definitely in that same high tenor type of voice. Yeah, and I think Kevin is a little bit grittier sounding than Steve, but but certainly, right in the same ballpark, and he could pull off all the Journey stuff. We did do some Journey songs in the Storm. We did Just the Same Way and Feeling That Way at Any Time, because Gregg, sang the lead, and they did a co-lead vocal originally with Steve, and so Kevin sang those tunes, and he was great. He's a great singer.
That is, again, listening to it, and I shared one of the songs from the Storm, and I said, holy moly. And people were agreeing. They said, wow, he really has that Steve Perry sound to him. So that was just kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, when the Storm got put together, Journey wasn't, kind of didn't exist. That after the Raised on Radio thing, they just sort of went away, and Jonathan and Neil were in bad English. There was no Journey. So the Storm, kind of in a small way, I guess, filled that void a little bit, at least for a minute.
Right. Right. People wanted it. They need to hear it. And, everybody loves Journey.
Yeah. No, it was a fun gig.
Now, in 1992, when the Storm opened for Bryan Adams, again, huge year for Bryan. He released Everything I Do It For You, #1 song for him. Do you realize tickets were only $22.50 at the Great Western Forum for that show in 1992?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like you can't get a hot dog for $22.50.
I know, that's crazy. Well, Gregg has a thing on his wall of like a replica or whatever of the ticket to Woodstock, which he played at. Yeah. And the tickets for that were $6.
Isn't that is just incredible to me. Yeah, and again, Gregg, iconic Gregg at Woodstock. I mean, wow, it's a lot. You've been very blessed. The Storm also worked alongside Peter Frampton, who is also getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. And you've worked. Look at all the people that who are getting inducted this year, and also you worked with the late great Eddie Money. So what do you remember about Eddie? I love Eddie. I had the honor of interviewing him one time, and his wife Lori is just incredibly amazing, keeping his legacy alive. What do you remember about Eddie?
Well, I only worked with Eddie very briefly. I only did a handful of shows, maybe 5 or 10 shows or something. It was just during one year. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 2013. And kind of a long story about the way that came about. But, he was another good guy. He was very funny. And, of course, he had a ton of hits, so all that stuff was fun to play. And, it was just I had a good time playing with him. I wish I could have done more with him, but, another one of those things in the music business. It is what it is. It lasted as long as it lasted. And then I wound up getting called by the guys in Creedence, and I went and worked with them. So that was the end of my Eddie stuff.
But, at least you got to, like you said, you got to work with him, because another icon of our time, Eddie Money. You can't go wrong having a piece of Eddie, And in late 93, early 94, you also became a member of David Lee Roth's band. David, come on. There's a lot of crazy stories about David, so... but it had to be cool to be in Diamond Dave's band.
Yeah, it was great fun playing all those Van Halen tunes and his solo tunes. Just Like Paradise and Just a Gigolo. All that was a blast to play. With the guy who sang them all. So yeah, and I was good friends with all the guys in that band. So that was a fun tour. We went, and there was another one. We went all over the place, Japan and Europe and all over North America. So it was a great tour.
And in 95, you got to work with whom I call one of the two greatest voices of the 80s, Mr. Lou Gramm in Foreigner. And this is when Mick Jones was still in Foreigner as well. And I adore Lou. He's one of the nicest guys going, for real. And it was just about 2 years before Lou had his brain surgery when you did get to work with him, and you were ready to go on the tour to Japan in 97, but that was canceled the night before you were scheduled to leave.
Yep. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Well, I mean, first of all, getting to play with Lou, he was at the height of his powers. He was in great shape. His voice sounded great. He was singing great. Mick sounded great. The band was really good. And that was another one we toured with, not only REO Speedwagon, but also Peter Frampton. So I toured with Peter twice, The Storm and with Foreigner. And, it was just great. We did a whole bunch of touring in 95, 96. 96 was the REO Peter Frampton one. And then we were getting ready to go to Japan in 97. And then we were going to do a tour with ZZ Top, I think was, in the summer. But, Lou, all the details, but he was diagnosed with this brain tumor, which he had to deal with. And he found out about it, right before we were going to Japan. And so, they called us and said, don't go to the airport tomorrow. That was really unfortunate. And, but, I was extremely grateful for all the time I did get to play with them and, play that iconic music with the guys who created it. And it was fantastic.
Yeah. And I mean, just watching some of the videos of you performing with Mick and Lou really was. And Mick, I mean, come on. It was just incredible. And to see you, at the drum kit, playing with these guys, incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible for me too.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, that I was listening to Lou in my ears every night playing those songs. It was fantastic. And Mick, the two main things that I had in my monitors in that band was Mick and Lou, because they were the the sound of that band, really.
It's true. And I always tell Lou, him and Mick had a magical moment in time, and no one can ever replace that, ever. And you got to work with him.
Yeah, I was very, very grateful for that too. I'm very grateful for my whole career. I've been, very blessed with all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, and now Foreigner's getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, like everybody we're talking about here, it's just crazy. And
Foreigner, Cher, and Frampton all in the same year.
Right? It's just, well, thank goodness it's finally happening, because I've been yapping about that for years. But, it's finally happening, and we're all very happy about it. And fast forward to 2021, another probable pinch me moment for you. You got to be asked to work in the Steve Miller Band. I mean, some people call me the Space Cowboy. How does that happen? It was, what did you have, 2 days to rehearse?
Well, I was sitting in my studio one morning about 9 or 9:30, and Scott Bourret called me, and he said, hey, what are you doing Saturday? This is a Thursday morning. And I said, nothing. Why? And he said, well, Steve's drummer, which is a guy named Gordy Knudsen, was a great guy, great drummer, was with Steve for 33 years. He had some personal issues that came up at the last minute, and he wasn't going to be able to make it to a show that they had, which was in New York at Jones Beach. And it was a benefit for something called Tunnel to Towers, because it was the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and it was commemorating that. And there was a whole bunch of bands playing. Ann Wilson played, and John Fogerty, and Gavin DeGraw, and Journey was on after us, and I'm forgetting half of them. Wyclef. There was just probably 20 bands or something, and it was being filmed and going to be on TV. And I had to learn basically a 25-minute set. So they gave me 5 songs to learn, which were 5 of the hits. Well, 4 of the hits and one that was a little less well known. And then so I learned all those all day Thursday. Flew out there on Friday and got to New York at about 2 p.m, and then we had a rehearsal that night at Jones Beach with just the band and crew. Steve wasn't there, actually. It was just the band and crew for the rehearsal. We had about 45 minutes on stage, and I had to learn all the gear, because all the gear was, as part of the production, and so I had to get all that sorted out. So, and then they actually changed 2 of the songs, so I had to learn those in my hotel room.
Oh my God.
And then we did the show the next day as a hurricane was approaching, which was fun. And then I met Steve about an hour before we went on stage, and the first time I played with him was on stage, you know, with an audience and you know, TV cameras rolling.
Oh
so
my
no pressure.
God. Yeah, right. And it's a good thing you guys gelled, because like, what if you couldn't even connect? You know what I mean?
Well, you know, I mean, we've all done this kind of stuff where you just kind of, you know, on different levels, smaller gigs, bigger gigs, where you just kind of, you know, go in there and you have to make it work. And Steve is no stranger to that sort of stuff. He comes from the blues, you know, ethic, I guess you'd call it, you know, where a lot of stuff, you know, you're just jamming or whatever, and you just have to listen. And you know, I did a lot of homework. You know, I listened to all the songs, got all the arrangements, wrote everything down. You know, I was ready. But, you know, you never know what kind of curveballs may be thrown, and you just have to, you know, pay attention and try to listen and adapt. You know, it's just kind of the way it is.
Right.
And it's like that really on any gig. You know, you never know what's going to happen on a gig.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember the hurricane. I wasn't there, but I watched it because Journey actually played in Central Park that afternoon, and then they, you know, went to play the Tunnel to Tower event, and it was pouring rain. You know, we're sitting there watching it, you know, on TV or whatever, and I said, "Oh my gosh!" And there were a few people just you know, sticking it out in their raincoats or no raincoats, and you know, everybody got through it though, I guess.
Yeah, there was actually some flooding in the front of the stage. You know, it was a bunch of cables there, and I think they were afraid that, you know, it was going to short out or people were going to get electrocuted or something. But yeah, everybody managed to make it work.
And got through it. And you did get through it. Yeah. Electrical and rain, it just doesn't go together, but it just, the event seemed to finish and do what it had to do.
Yep.
And this summer, you are heading on the road, not only with the Steve Miller Band, but you're doing the stadium tour with Def Leppard and Journey. How excited are you about that?
Oh, we're all looking really forward to that. It's going to be a blast. It's, you know, I mean, it's big, you know, the biggest venues you could play, really. And, you know, we're doing 16 of those shows. I think there's 23 total on the whole stadium tour, and Cheap Trick is doing 4 of them, and Heart is doing 3 of them. I think we were offered all of them, but I think Steve didn't want to be out continuously, you know, or I don't know. I think that's what happened. I'm not entirely sure. But
yeah. But Steve is going to be 81 in October, and it looks like he's not going anywhere anytime soon, and he looks great. I mean, you guys are doing tons of shows this summer.
Steve looks great, and he sings great, and he plays great, and he's still singing the songs in the original key, which, if you can believe that,
wow.
Which is amazing. And there's a lot of bands who lower the keys, you know.
Right.
And, you know, at much younger ages. But Steve is still, you know, he's still strong, and he's still feisty, he still loves doing it. And we were in the studio last year I think we cut like 25 different things in the studio, and, you know, he doesn't need to do any of that. He just loves doing it. And, you know, I mean, we did a few shows last year with the Eagles, and Don Henley would come on after us and say, Steve Miller, 80 years old and still kicking ass.
It's incredible. It really is. Yeah. And, you know, when you're doing something you love, it's not a job. It's just because you love to do it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Steve Miller song to play?
Oh boy, there's a lot of them. I don't know. I think I really like playing "Take the Money and Run."
Yeah.
I like playing a song that's a little less well known called "Shibata Do Ma 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 Ma." I like playing "Jet Airliner," "Rockin' Me." "The Joker" is fun to play. You know, "Fly Like an Eagle." They're all fun to play. You know, they're all a little bit different. You know, there's a lot of different grooves, you know, between the whole catalog, and and the band is great. Everybody in the band is really, really good. And most of those guys have been with him for a long time. Kenny, the bass player, has been in Steve's band on and off for over 40 years. And Joseph the keyboard player, has been there for 31 years, I think. And Jacob, the other guitar player, I think he's in maybe year 14 now, something like that. I'm the new guy.
You're the new guy. Yeah, Kenny's great. I love his wife, Diane. I got to interview her a few years ago. She is so funny. They just seem like a bunch of great people. And again, like you said, you're just blessed. But out of everyone you've worked with, Gregg and Cher, Richie Sambora, David Lee Roth, now Steve Miller, what is the best part of working with all of these real different artists and musicians? And what is one of the craziest stories that you have to share?
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, for me, one of the really fun parts about all the different things that I've done with all the different people I've done them with is the variety. Like I said earlier, Cher was a big extravagant thing with a lot of production. It was mainly a rock band, but we did some stuff with electronics, and then Dave. I guess the Storm was next, so that was more the melodic rock, arena rock type of thing, and then Dave was a little heavier with all the Van Halen stuff, and Foreigner, of course, with Lou and that voice and all those great songs. And then Richie, Richie was another guy who loved doing a lot of different things. We would cover, Bad Company songs and Stevie Wonder and the Beatles and, in addition to all the solo stuff and Bon Jovi stuff that we did. And he's an amazing singer. A lot of people don't realize what a great singer he is.
Yeah.
And then Gregg, we did all the Latin-based stuff, the Santana type stuff. And then, CCR was sort of more the rootsy kind of swampy stuff. And now, I don't know, to me, it's just like, the music is really good with all those bands, obviously, or they wouldn't have become as popular as they have been. And, I'm very fortunate to be able to have all those different experiences, with all those different people. It's a huge variety of personalities and musicians and instrumentation and all that stuff. So that's been great. And as far as crazy stories, I don't know. I don't even know where to start with that.
So you've got some then.
Huh?
You've got some.
Yeah, I don't know if they probably should be saved for the book or something.
Oh, come on. You can give us one.
I don't know. Okay, here's one a little bit crazy. We were doing the MTV Awards with Cher, and a couple things happened. One was Andrew Dice Clay was introducing us, and we were on live without any tape delay, which was kind of a common thing. And he started, throwing in a bunch of profanities and that sort of stuff. So Dick Clark, who was producing the show, was, you could see him on the side of the stage, sort of with steam coming out of his ears. He was so upset. And then right before we were getting ready to play, somebody unplugged something, and all of the guitar amps and bass amps on the right side of the stage were there was no power. So there was a lot of scrambling going on to get all of that going. And, and then the whole backstage thing at that show was crazy too. I think there was a fight between, I can't remember who it was, Motley Crue and somebody else, or I don't know. It was just one of those crazy nights in the music business. And I was sort of a innocent bystander, just there to do my gig and play one song.
Oh, that's so fun, though.
Yeah.
Oh,
we just did the one song. We just did If I Could Turn Back Time, and that was it.
So if we go back and try to find Cher at the MTV Awards, would we be able to see that everything was unplugged and everybody had to try and put it back together?
No, they were able to recover in time.
Oh, wow.
They got it sorted out, but it was a little bit scary while we were waiting for them to figure it out.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure a minute seemed like an hour.
Yeah. It probably only took him a minute to figure it out, but it seemed like it was, an eternity.
Oh my gosh. Well, Ron, thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out of your day on your way to see Steve, actually, like you had said. And
I'm actually not going to see Steve today. I'm working with his recording engineer and another guy. We're getting some technical stuff sorted out before the tour. But our first show, I'll see Steve next week. We play in Alabama on the 18th. So.
Nice. Well, you have a great stadium tour coming up, like I said, with Journey and Def Leppard. Everyone can get tickets at j50.stevemillerband.com, and everyone can go see you, Ron, on drums in the stadiums and also not in the stadiums this summer with Steve Miller and everybody else. And we thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.